perfect square trinomial. I've taken this and I've put it into a graphing calculator here. And what you want to show you here is the x-intercept of a perfect square trinomial is where the vertex touches the x-axis, sorry. So there's only one. And what that means is we're going to end up in a scenario where we have y is equal to some bracket to the power of 2. In other words, the bracket's going to be the same when we factor, okay? So I wanted to give you that as like a goal to keep in mind as we're going through the factoring process. If you can recognize a perfect square trinomial, which I don't always find the easiest thing to do, it can technically be represented as, let's get this back here, y is equal to the first term, so we'll call it a. It's not quite the same a as before. The whole term is squared here. So a squared plus 2 times a itself times b itself plus b. So this is a way they represent it. I mean, you could use any letters, a and b. You could call it, m and n. And this last term is also something that can square root. So what I'm going to do is try to pull this information out and put together a perfect square trinomial quickly, but I'll also show you how our standard factoring methods factor this the exact same, and there's just one extra step at the end. Sometimes it's better just to kind of be more of an expert or a master of one style than having to memorize so many different ones. Most likely what they want you to do is be able to recognize one of these things. So I'll use the perfect square trinomial method on the right side here. In this case, y is equal to 4x squared plus 12x plus 9. So take a look here. Well, this is our entire a value, and this is our entire b value. These are not the same a and b's that we're used to seeing in the standard form, so keep that in mind. The common way of doing it is representing with the same lettered variable, but I know that can become a little bit confusing. In order to find out what a is, this is actually a squared. So we have to find the square root of this to find out what a is. So square root of 4x squared is actually 2x, okay? And I know technically it's a plus and a minus, but we're going to work with just the positive values. It's actually only the middle term that comes into play for negatives. In this case, it's positive, so we'll focus on those. We also need to find the square root of the very last term. And again, technically you get a plus and a minus, but we're going to focus on just the positive value, which is 3. So if our b value is 3 and our a value is 2x, that means this can be written like this perfect square trinomial. Y is equal to, 2x squared. Okay, think of that as our a value, is equal, plus 2 times 2x. You don't have to write these steps in, but I just want to point out this is how it's built. Plus 3, and then plus 3 squared. That's a 9. I definitely messed that up. Give me a second. Let's turn that into a squared value. Okay. So if this is true, which it happens to be, 2x squared is 4x. 2x to the power of 2 is 4x squared. 2x times 3 is 6x, times 2 is 12x, that checks out. And 3 squared is 9, that checks out. So this is a perfect square trinomial. I was able to break it up, and in its decomposed form, it's technically turns out to be this standard one. And if it is that, well, then we can jump to the very last step, okay? And the a value can be the first term. The b value can be the second term. So in this case, that's 3. The a value was 2x. We take the operation of the middle term. So because it's positive, we put a plus between them, and we square it at the end. And this is the final outcome. If I put it into the graphing calculator, 2x plus 3 squared. We replace this with 2x plus 3. Hey, yep, it's the exact same quadratic. We've gone through the factoring process correctly. Sometimes I feel that this can be difficult to recognize. So let's just assume we didn't recognize it, okay? Well, if I was going to factor by decomposition, I'm going to look for two numbers that multiply to 4 times 9, right? Our a times c, which in this case happens to be 36. And those same two values are going to add up to our b, which in this case is 12. hey, looks really nice. And this is where we start to realize right off the bat that it's a perfect square trinomial, is these are the same value. 6 plus 6 and 6 times 6. That kind of means something to us. We get y is equal to 4x squared. We decompose that 12 into 6x and 6x, okay, plus 9. We're going to common factor out. I know I can take out 2x from each of these. And from the last two, I can take out the number 3. Okay. So when we do the common factoring, we get y is equal to 2x. We divide it, we get 2x actually, and this becomes positive 3. Here we take out positive 3, and maybe you're starting to recognize the pattern already. We get 2x plus 3. We're going to common factor out the two brackets that I've put in black at the moment. They become our common factor, which is 2x plus 3. The second bracket, we write whatever's left over, right, which is 2x plus 3. I feel like I've said those quite a lot. And because they're the same, instead of leaving it in this form, we just condense it. We simplify 2x plus 3 squared. So these, you'll notice, are the exact same answer. This is a standard method we're used to using. This is something they want you to try to recognize, but you can always get to that answer using our standard method. In fact, I'll quickly write it out here. Let's say I did fearless factoring, just to kind of reiterate that style. We take factors of the first term, 1 in 4. And fearless factoring is when we really start to see that, hey, we know this is going to be a perfect square trinomial. Because if we take a look here, these are the same and these are the same. In other words, I can take square roots of these values. And because I know this is a perfect square trinomial, are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know it's a perfect square trinomial, I'm going to cheat here. Instead of going through the first ones, I know it's going to be 2x times 3, 2x times 3. That's going to give us 6x and 6x, and it had to add up to our 12x. So the final value here is going to be 2x plus 3, and the other bracket's going to be 2x plus 3. And like we did before, we would just condense. I ran out of room. Y is equal to 2x plus 3 squared. Yep. So all of these methods work. They just kind of want you to be able to recognize if something is